I'm not fucking Midjourney. I'm not a prompt machine. Like, that's not how it works when you're working with a human. Good evening, folks, and welcome back to another episode of Carving Fire, the way of the artist. This is me, Chris, and Adrian speaking. We're your hosts, and we're happy to welcome you again.
Indeed.
Adrian, we were going to talk a little bit about the dynamics between the artist life when it comes to doing private work and also client work. Like, there is a huge difference for me, at least. Yeah, we're going to dip into that a bit and see what's going to come out.
Yeah, I feel like it's quite a common split for an artist these days, kind of having, at least for me anyway, having two separate ways of thinking when it comes to approaching a piece of work. And I feel like I enjoy certain elements of both sides, and I won't say dislike, it's a strong word. I enjoy less certain parts of each side. Like, I've always enjoyed having the opinions and kind of input of a client and learning the confidence to use certain ones and kind of how to maybe redirect certain ideas and kind of end up meeting in the middle. That's always been something I've found quite enjoyable, which I didn't think I would right at the start. I was super nervous about whether I was expected to do all the ideas that they suggested. Which
that's a very good point, actually.
Yeah, and then I feel like just with time, everyone kind of learns their own ways of navigating that, which, to be honest, I don't think there's many full-time artists now that will do every idea that gets suggested to them. And if they can do that and keep their work super high quality, then amazing, credit to them. But I think there's a skill in learning how to take ideas that get suggested to you and kind of mold them so that they work for both of you. And sometimes that can happen, and sometimes it's just not meant to be.
Yeah.
And learning to navigate that's been quite interesting for me.
Absolutely the same here. It's really interesting that you had the very same experience, especially when it comes, you said you've been nervous at the beginning when concerning the expectations that you were thinking about, like, the client would be having. So,
well, I was just literally, I didn't know, like, if they was giving me some ideas, I was like, well, I don't know if I can draw that yet. Like, I'm going to have to take time to either learn to draw or something. There's all kinds of things in your head when you're new to it, I think.
Yeah, exactly the same for me, really. I mean, when it comes to 3D design, it's obviously a different dynamic. And, people kind of, I guess, expect that, oh, well, it's 3D, you can basically do anything. And it's just like, it's just going to be working like that. And you're just going to have to set it up. And for example, I had one band who they had a cool idea for an artwork. But it was like basically a whole world design, a design within a design, more or less. And to make that work in a composition that would make sense, but also from a technical point of view, was to me like a total nightmare. Like, I thought, like, this is going to be impossible. It's going to be like 10 times. It's going to be needing 10 times the budget that they had. So yeah, I just had to make them realize it's not going to happen, at least not with me, and not with that kind of budget. And sometimes that can be, a matter of how to navigate that conversation really with a client to not piss them off, but make them realize, sorry, but you're basically out of your budget with this kind of idea or like, yeah, these aspirations really. And
yeah, it can be tricky because it's understandable for a client to have the final image in their head or a version of, yeah, we know everything that goes into getting to that point. And we know what will work for us, like you say, in terms of like the skill level we're at that point, you know, just because we're a full-time artist or illustrator or 3D artist, whatever, you're still on the ladder, you're still on a skill ladder to some
very
degree.
much so.
Yeah, and that's just the way of it. Same with bands. Some are more skilled than others, some are better songwriters than others. That's just how it is. And I'd hate to think that some bands assume that just because they're paying for some work, that they can just expect anything they possibly could imagine. It's like,
yeah,
that's just not how it works, unfortunately. Which, to be honest, I'm not saying, at least in my experience, I'm not saying I've had many bands do that, but it wouldn't surprise me if some illustrators or artists have had some experiences like that, where they've, like you say, you've kind of got to explain our side of it and hope that they kind of understand enough to give us enough freedom to eventually give them what they need, but that comes from us, not from a point of compromising anyway.
Yeah, I think maybe the growing AI usage in the art world also doesn't really contribute anything good to this kind of expectation from a client, especially for people who don't really have any clue about how visual art works in any way, like no matter the genre.
Well, yeah, because it just skips to the end part. There's no natural progression to get
exactly.
there. It skips to the awful end, that we see. You can see in the final work all the shortcuts that have been made.
And I've a couple of months ago I had someone contacting me for their first ever artwork. It was like a musician, and they wanted to put out an album and asked me to do the artwork. And it was just the mail was just a flood of expectations and ideas, like totally random and really chaotic and didn't make any sense for me. And I just felt like, dude, I'm not fucking Midjourney. I'm not a prompt machine. Like that's not how it works when you're working with a human. Like,
no,
it's not just putting in your wishes and then they're gonna come out like that. And I really felt like this was the first time that I felt like I got a person here that actually thinks that this is the way to do this kind of, to have this connection to someone, and just putting in a wish list for them and they're going to execute it exactly like that. It wasn't even a question of would it be possible to do this, or would you be able to somehow do something in this direction or anything. It was just like, so this is the picture, and there's this and that in it, and there's this happening, and it really felt to me as like he would just be writing prompts into Midjourney, really, and that felt kind of weird.
Yeah. Thing is, there are probably some artists who will take that on, but you're going to pay more for that. Like, generally, the idea is the more specific your brief is, the more time it will take and the more you will pay.
I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, actually, because it can be a very specific wish a client has, and it can still be a very simple one. I had one recently where the idea was very specific, and the execution from my part was done in like 2 days or so. And it was to their satisfaction, great satisfaction actually, and to mine as well. I was really happy with the thing. And yeah, I guess that showed me sometimes it can really just work out if you hit like the nerve with someone and you're speaking of the same thing, and they know your style and they have an idea in which direction it could go.
Sometimes you can almost tell that they've spent some time looking at your work.
Exactly.
That's always nice.
I think it's always beneficial if they can give you a reference of stuff you did in the past, so you have an idea what. I mean, in your case, I guess it's a bit different than in mine, because you always have like a very, obviously it's a different genre as well. It's a different art style, but also you always have like a very distinctive vibe and a very specific way of doing things. So I guess it's a bit easier, I dare say, for people to imagine the direction it could go in, right?
Maybe, yeah. It'd be interesting to hear. Well, I suppose it depends. I feel like it depends on the idea that they've got in their head, if that aligns with what they've already seen from us, or if they're literally coming at it. Because I've had bands say to me, like, I've got this idea, and I feel like they've literally said, I feel like you're the only artist who could do it. And I read that email and I chuckle, and I'm like, that's a super bold statement, and it's absolutely not true. And then I read their idea, and it's like, I won't say it's like a common idea, but it's absolutely something others could do. And if I can kind of suggest certain things to go along with that, and we meet in the middle, because I'm always reluctant to do like a design brief that's 100% from the list that I get given, like you said about that email that was just a full list of demands. I'm not sure I've ever like dared try to meet all them, and I'm not sure if that comes from a lack of confidence place, or just a need to have some creative input. I'm not really sure, and that's when I put out the feelers of, I'm into this and this part of your brief. What about we add this and this and this? And then it's kind of just, potluck then if they match up on that, or if they're married to that idea initially, and then we kind of navigate from there. But while I've got it in mind, one thing I did want to ask you is, just as like we mentioned right at the start about ways of communicating ideas and things, for you coming from a band point of view, you've obviously communicated with all kinds of people, whether it's promoters, labels, other bands, artists, everyone. Do you have anything that you kind of brought over to the 3D art that you've learned from dealing with people through the band?
Absolutely. I mean, not only from the visual art aspect, but also as a musician myself from the other side, like knowing how it is to be the executor of the idea instead of being the one who's demanding it. I've learned a ton, actually. And I mean, one thing from the other side is a very, very specific one, but a very clear one to me is when I go to the studio to mix a record, like my next record, which is always a process I dread deeply, because it really brings me to my knees every time, and it's such a difficult process. And I've worked with two different people so far only when it comes to mixing an album. No, actually that's not true. It's been three really, but I know them all very well by now, and we've gone through a lot together during these mixes. But over the years, when I started becoming a visual artist and dealing with clients myself, I guess I developed kind of a different kind of understanding of their viewpoint when they're fed up with my insanity while mixing an album with them. Because I'm always looking over their shoulder every step of the way. I'm always there. I'm always commenting. I'm always giving my input. I'm always demanding stuff. And it must be so difficult for them. And luckily, the one person I did the last two 𝔚𝔕𝐻 records with, is very patient and very easygoing when it comes to these kind of things. Like, he doesn't stress quickly and stuff. So we've managed to keep it really well together, I'd say, for the last two records we did. And I didn't drive him to hate me. But
do they kind of ever like, so like if there was anything that we needed to address within like dealing with a client, would they ever kind of just say, I don't know, listen, I just need some time on my own, or would they kind of like give you tips on how to just kind of help with the process? Or
not really. It's really a constant dialogue when mixing an album,
right.
and it's really just sometimes you go against each other because the opinions are different. It's sometimes it's really just a matter of taste on certain things and not necessarily a technical question or anything. And then everyone's got their preferences how to do stuff. And as a professional, I guess if you feel like, okay, the client actually right now he demands something that is really going against my professional views of how to do this, and then obviously they would say something. And that's what I've been saying before, that being on the other side of this ship or of this river it has been kind of giving me a better understanding of what they're going through while I mix an album with them, and I guess made me more compassionate to how they feel and how difficult their side in this process is as well. So
I can imagine they must know it's coming from a place of like a well-meaning
vision.
Place. Like,
it's coming from a place of vision, really. Like, I know exactly what has to happen, and sometimes I don't know how to make it happen, and that's where the problems arise.
Sometimes the journey there is filled with fire that you have to walk through.
Exactly. But on the other hand, I mean, when it comes to the artist side, I guess, I also know how to, where I should tell someone to really, or like demand them to be ready for compromise, or when to just go with their ideas and try to work with them as much as I can, like work towards their vision. Sometimes you have a client that actually has a vision, and it's a possible one. It's a good one. It makes sense, and then you try to get as close to that vision as possible. Sometimes sometimes you hear stuff that is just bonkers, and you just think like, fucking hell, no, I'm never gonna do that, and it's not gonna be possible, or it's just gonna be shitty and doesn't make any sense, and then you, I guess, try to find a compromise with them.
Yeah, I've just finished up a full album project for 𝐂𝐴 from France.
I remember you asked me once about the animation stuff, right?
We weren't sure what direction they were going to go for the digital stuff, but they took care of
course.
And basically, it's exactly what you've just said in terms of like, so 𝐵𝐷𝑖er had this vision in mind, and the more we worked together, the more I got a sense of his creative process and how he kind of allows, like, it was the perfect balance of him providing ideas and thoughts, but then letting me have the room to be creative with it, and it worked perfectly. And like some of the early references that he sent me were quite, I'd say quite basic, but I feel like he recognized that we just needed a platform or like a stepping stone to start on. And then he trusted the process of us working together and discussing things and back and forth. And I really got a sense that he valued the creative process just as much as I did. and we were both aiming towards the end result from a very similar mindset, but from an actual two very different areas in terms of him producing the music, and me creating the visuals. And it was honestly like my most favorite project I've done to date, like from start to finish. And
it also looks absolutely killer, by the way. I really loved it when I saw it. And I can imagine it was a bit out of your comfort zone, maybe.
It was, in the best possible way, because when we did a video call right at the start with himself and his manager, and one of the last sort of things that he said was like, because he knows he's very like back and forth in terms of like getting through the details and changing things and trying things out, and he was super upfront with that right from the start.
Fair enough.
And which is great. I love when bands lay it all out from the start, and I can kind of get an idea of where we're going. That's to me, that's ideal.
That's what I always try. Sorry to interrupt. I'm just gonna let you finish, but that's what I always try to do from the band point as well when I work with someone, especially with like the people who mix the album with me. It's always like when I meet someone new and start to work on something like that with someone I don't know yet, I try to be as preparing towards them as I can. And explaining like, it's difficult music. It's very difficult to mix this stuff. I have very, very specific preferences, and it can be a real pain in the ass. And just so you're prepared. And I mean,
it's just showing them an awareness, I think, rather than
exactly.
Yeah.
And showing the awareness of that you're aware that you're going to be a pain in the ass at some point.
But it will be worth it. You'll get to the end.
Yeah, exactly. But exactly, it's not without reason. There's always a reason for being the pain in the ass.
Yeah, and it's worth it. Because when I think back to the 𝐂𝐚𝐫𝐲 album, when I think back of all the minute details that we went back and forth on and kind of considered different options and everything, we got super, super into it. And I genuinely didn't mind at the time, but I look back now and I was like, I love it. I love how we just kind of met in the middle with everything. And he had some color and texture ideas for me to aim for. So even from the very get-go, like I had a picture in my head of where we were going with it, and then it's just a case of building that cover. And even like down to so if anyone's seen the cover already, it's basically this kind of central, almost godlike figure, and he ended up with a name. I'm pretty sure his name was Giuseppe. And it's one of those details that kind of, it made the whole thing super fun. And like the amount of Easter eggs in that, the amount of like hidden details in that cover are ridiculous. And I keep finding them and forgetting them we did them.
Yeah, I can imagine that he's the exact kind of person that would do this thing, because the music is like that as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and the more you listen, the more you hear.
I'm just gonna have another look. Oh yeah, right.
Zoom in on the lower hands, and there's 𝐂𝐚𝐫𝐲𝐻's cat paw in there. There's a dog paw that represents my dog paw.
Wow.
What else was there? There's two arms with thumbs up, one either side. And I kind of wanted to add 𝐂𝐚𝐫𝐲𝐻 and myself in there somehow that wasn't like super obvious. And I have tattoos on my arm, so it was easier for me, but he doesn't have any tattoos. So I was like, if you were to get a tattoo, with no commitment in a fantasy world, what would you get? And he's like, I love pizza. So I just drew a slice of pizza on there. And it's just all these little things.
I can see it actually.
Yeah, so it's full of those, and there's some more like when the vinyl gets released, there's a lot more tucked away in there, and even like on the rows of the faded symbols that are either side of the main character, even like hidden in there's one of his cat, and I think my dog's in there again, and there's things I forget, and as soon as I get my hands on it, I'm gonna have to find it again. It was so fun, and it's just, my point is, it's a perfect example of when both sides of the project are
pulling at the same string.
Yeah,
that's
aware
how we
of
would
what's
say it in
needed.
German.
Yeah, both sides are aware of what's needed to get the end result where both sides are happy. There's no compromise on either side. And it's rare. Like, I feel like I've had one or two maybe other projects that have been close to this, but I genuinely feel like it might be another 10 years before I get another project like that. He's the Red Dead Redemption of games. Like, no game ever compromises.
Yeah, true. Every 10 years, that's pretty much how Rockstar games get released, right? But yeah, it's really insane. All the symbols in the background and stuff. I actually didn't even notice that when I took the first look on Instagram. Obviously, it's just
he purposefully asked for those to be super faded.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I think he even considered not using them at one point, and then he sent me the very final version to post, and he had them in, and I was so glad he had them in.
It looks really great.
That's just the finishing touch.
There is actually there is quite a kind of a Sahara vibe to the whole thing. Like, it seems very sandy and very I don't know.
He wanted that old tapestry look.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, there's definitely a vibe like that, and also the colors and the textures. I remember when I saw it first time, I was kind of surprised about the wrinkles, like the folding wrinkles in the
that was another request. Yeah, he requested that. So
it's kind of bold, isn't it?
Yeah, I made them myself. I've got some old parchment paper in a drawer somewhere. So I folded them, made them super old looking, and I can't remember what else I did. I think rubbed some
charcoal or something.
Pencil, like pencil lead. I kind of ground that up and just worn it all up and then scanned it in, and then just used that, and it worked out well.
Works super great. Like, with old books, there you can do a lot with that stuff. I did some stuff like 10 years ago, something like that as well for the 𝔚𝔕𝐻 page back then.
And we even did, like, we went back and forth on how apparent those folds were and how faded they were and everything. It was great.
I can imagine, because really it really kind of disrupts the whole thing in a positive way, but I guess it's easy to overdo it as well, especially it goes right through the logo.
Oh, it goes through everything. Yeah, that's like,
apart from the album title.
On one page. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really great work, no doubt, no question.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I think we were at it for about 3 months from start to finish. Yeah, but it was so worth it. And even when getting into all those details, I was just very present in all of it, and it was great, because it wasn't like there was. At least I never felt like there was a point where he was frustrated that we were trying different things.
Yeah.
Just because I didn't get it first time, he was, even the things that I didn't get right, he was so patient and understanding and clear with his, like, English isn't his first language. He's from France. So he kind of, he did everything in English for my benefit, which was just, I was even more grateful for. And it's, that's what made the back and forth so easy, is his understanding and his clear descriptions of everything. And I'm aware of us getting away from the balance between client work and personal work. So I feel like it's work now. We've kind of laid out a lot of the details of client work.
Yeah, but I think that's a very, very specifically interesting point like this artwork or like your process with it, because it shows how many different layers working with clients really can have at the end of the day. Because like sometimes you get a job that is just like you want to pull your hair out because nothing is working, the communication is shitty, there is no common ground and stuff, and no understanding and no patience, maybe not enough money, all that kind of stuff that can really be a pain in the ass in this line of
time
work.
as well. Like,
yeah, of course.
when the deadlines are so short, that's the worst for me. Like I've done a few, like the Paradise Lost cover I did. I think we were given, was it a month or 2 months over Christmas to do it from start to finish.
Nice. Best timing, really.
Oh yeah, it's not like I've got anything else on my mind. But it's one of them. Like, obviously, if it was that much of an issue, I'd have brought it up and tried to change it or anything like that. But it's just not quite ideal. I don't feel like you get the best work if you kind of put those constraints in, especially over Christmas and New Year. Like, I like to take a week off over Christmas and New Year just to kind of eat too much and feel bad about myself so that I can come back to work nice and fresh in January. But
I wanted to try that too this year.
With it. So I'm always interested with other people's starting point for personal work and how the seed is first sort of planted and what your first steps are and how it looks in your initial idea to how it ends up. Do you feel like your early ideas generally look like the final piece, or do you either allow for or purposefully make point for like things to change as much as they need?
Honestly, to me, it always feels like, and this is a very open, very honest recollection of things for me. It honestly feels like I have a great idea, and then I start working on the basics to make it happen. And I'm talking about 3D design now. And usually I rather quickly see that my abilities aren't nearly close enough to make it happen as I had it in my head. And then I just let it, just take the free fall into whatever is going to happen with it after that point. Like, I mean, obviously I'm overstating this a little bit, but sometimes it actually does happen that sometimes something gets rather close to what I had in mind initially, but a lot of the times it really doesn't, and it really goes into somewhere completely different, which is still very enjoyable. And I think there is kind of a freeing aspect in letting things happen as they come along, instead of trying to, really trying to force it and trying to get to that exact thing that you had in your head, even though
you got an idea.
It can have like obviously a very fulfilling moment when you actually pull yourself together hard enough and actually do get very close to that thing you had in your head and overcome a lot of obstacles on the way there. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, I try to be rather realistic and know that I'm not going to spend half a year of work into making one piece, because it's just like, first of all, it costs way too much energy for me. Second, I have not nearly enough time to do that. And third, I'm just not like, I have to be so consistent and so uncompromising in what I do music wise, and so focused that I just don't have the resilience to really do this level of commitment on just a personal art piece, like a visual art piece. That's, I think, all that energy I do have in me really goes into the music side of things and trying to survive as an artist, really, because it really is hard work. especially in Switzerland. And that's why I'm okay when I do something personal to just let it flow somewhere and be fine if it's not like 120% of that thing that I had in my head initially.
Yeah.
It's totally fine.
Not every piece has to be a masterpiece.
No, exactly. And sometimes they are actually turning out way better than whatever I had in mind anyway. So yeah.
Yeah. It's being open to that kind of on the spot creative process, the flow. You have to be open to that. And sometimes what you have in your head can be just a push in the right direction, just to kind of get things flowing.
Absolutely. And I usually that's exactly how I see these ideas. Like you have you have a cool idea that you want to somehow visualize and somehow cast into stone to be dramatic, and it's totally fine if it's not going to happen like that. I just see that as a spark that lights a fire, and the fire is going to go wherever it goes, and I'm just going to let it guide me, really.
That's the best way I feel. So you made a good point that I don't feel like I've really taken on board until now in terms of how you, like your process for the 3D work and just the time it does take. Like I feel like I'm so used to my traditional process of, the larger pieces do take time, but I feel like the 3D process does take longer just due to the nature of it. So my question is, basically, I can get burnt out on a piece of mine that I've spent too long on. I can get towards the end of it and my brain's just done with it. I just need to move on and get on something new. Do you ever kind of battle with that, and with the time that it takes for you to complete a piece? How do you kind of stick it out for that last however long?
I'm not really sure, to be honest. I mean, I feel like that a lot of the time with client work, but it's really the first thing that comes to mind is the 3D animation, like the music videos I did start last year, because that's when I really started doing proper 3D animation work, which this is really like the thing that's by far costing the most time that you could imagine. And you could be wrong, actually, when you say you think that generally my 3D work would take much more time than your illustrations. I always think, fucking hell, how can he have the patience to go through this every fucking stroke? Like all these little shadow layers and textures and all that kind of stuff. And fucking hell, I would never have the patience anymore. And I always think like... I'm so glad I can just like take the last skull I made 10 months ago or so and rearrange it a bit and sculpt over it and put like shit on there and have some modifiers that do all the work for me. Like when it comes to mandala like stuff and ornamentations and everything, I can just take one piece and make beautifully looking ornamentation, like kind of a mandala piece or something like that, within a matter of seconds. And so I think it's fair to say that depending on what exactly you're working on, it can take much less time than you would expect to do like a proper 3D design when it's a still image. But when it comes to animations, fucking hell, that's a whole different beast. And really, I struggled a lot with. I've done 3 music videos on 3D basis by now, and the last one I did was for a client at the beginning of the year, and that also took around 1.5 months in total for around 8 minutes of music, and I actually expected it to be another fucking 2.5 to 3 months, because that's how long the first 𝕬𝖗𝔻 video took. That's about the same length. But I managed to just modify my workflow with a couple of technical tricks that I just haven't figured out yet back then, modify it like at least to get it at least done at least like 3 times quicker. Just the render time was insanely big step just because of a couple of clicks that I haven't known about before, because I basically have no clue, and all I'm doing is trying shit out and watch random tutorials that I can find. That's really all there is to it for me. And
yeah, but it's like anything, like as you step through different projects, you'll find quicker ways of doing certain elements. Like,
but you will always have to, draw every fucking stroke. And there is nothing that can make that any quicker. It's just how it is. Like, there is no magic tool or magic pen that's gonna do it for you, really.
No, that's a fair point.
So I think your work really does need more patience in general than mine. I think that's fair to say, and that's why I say I don't regularly find myself in that spot that you described, with being over a piece and just wanting to get it done and be done with it. Like, I rarely ever hit that point, I think, when it comes to personal work.
That's fair enough. Yeah, I just like hearing different approaches and kind of mindsets within like the middle of a larger project. I never know if how I feel is normal or not.
Oh, that's such a... I guess what normal is whatever you feel like, because we're all human.
Yeah.
Right? And no one knows the answer to any of these questions, and there is no wrong and right, in my opinion, anyway. Like, it's just...
No, I do have a version of, like you said, you've used certain things before, like from other projects and stuff. There are, like, I can get away with certain things in that regard. Like, at the end of the day, a front-facing skull is a front-facing skull. Like, for the most part, I draw them fresh each time, but sometimes if I see... So part of my process is having, like, a separate sheet full of, like, separate parts that I've used to build up the main sketch. So I'll come into my office one day and I'll see, like, a pencil sketch of a skull, and I'll be like, I just have the urge to ink it, and then it'll end up adding stuff to that. And that's the same skull I've used on something else, but how many times can you redraw a skull and it look different, kind of thing?
Exactly. And also, who the fuck gives a shit, really? Because no one's ever going to notice. And even if they do, even if I might have noticed like 1 or 2 of the same basic elements in your work here and there, I would think I did. I couldn't care less, really, because obviously, to me, this is absolutely legitimate. Like, there is no question about it, really. It's not cheating.
Kind of, no, it's efficiency. That's what we'll call it.
Yeah, and you got to be realistic. If I would, we talked about that exact same point last time. I remember if I would sculpt every fucking asset I use in 3D from scratch, I would have done maybe 3 pieces by now in the last 4 years or 5 years I've been doing this, really. I mean, obviously that's an overstatement again, but get the gist, really.
Yeah.
You have to be efficient as an artist. Like, efficiency is one of the most important points in my whole life as an artist, and beyond that as well, because I had to learn at some point the resource I need to be able to live my life as an artist and to be able to pay my bills. It needs so much more time than having a 9 to 5 regular job 5 days a week. I'm basically working every single day on art in some way or another, and usually like for pretty much the whole day. And that is fine, absolutely, and that's what I'm choosing to do. And I'm not complaining about that at all. But I'm just saying, like, if you live a lifestyle like this, you have to be, at some point, you need to be able to build up an efficiency in how you do things. Otherwise, it's gonna fucking drive you in the ground within a year.
Yeah, definitely. Learning to utilize your time in terms of like a list of what needs to come first, what can wait a little bit, but it can be crucial to the whole, not just the process of a project, like you say, just day-to-day living. Like if you're not conscious of how you're managing certain projects, and like a lot of the time I'll have 2 or 3 projects on the go, and then I'll flick between them depending on feedback from clients and things like that. And that's just something I've learned over the years. Like when I first started, I wouldn't have ever imagined having more than one project on at once. Whereas just out of over experience, and then when I've sent like a sketch off and waited for feedback, and then you might not hear anything for 3 or 4 days. It's kind of, you look back and you go, in the early days, I'd sit and wait on that, and then I quickly learned that I could fill that space with the early stages of my next project that I've got booked in, and I can say to them, like, yeah, sometimes come up, I'm a bit ahead of schedule, so there's no pressure for me to kind of keep that second project ball rolling. I can come back to that as I need. So learning how to keep multiple plates spinning effectively and not kind of taking on too much, I think is something that you have to learn on the spot. You can't kind of, you have to go through learning how it feels to kind of have multiple projects. And I think everyone's a little bit different. Some will probably only have 2, some maybe 3 or 4. I can't imagine anyone having just one on the go unless they have full creative freedom that doesn't require any feedback at all.
Well, for me, I guess it's a bit different when it comes to that, because first of all, I'm not that established yet as a visual artist. I still have times in the year where I maybe don't have any client requests for like 2 months or so, which is totally fine, because that gives me time for personal stuff, which I usually don't really have. And also...
I was going to ask how you use that time.
As I said, really, I always work on anything art or like my art business. Sometimes I just wake up in the morning and I feel like I'm going to do a t-shirt design to put on my Etsy shop. Even though I might be a bit swamped with client stuff, but I just can't be bothered with it. Which is...
Do you ever see some personal work as like an opportunity to practice something that you maybe feel like you could spend more time on, or some new techniques that you've got in mind or anything? Yeah. Do you kind of allow yourself to do that with personal work?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, usually it happens like maybe once or twice in a year where I actually do have the energy to explore a new software or a new plugin or like a new technique or some tutorials or whatever. But usually, like, it takes me a lot because I'm always kind of at the capacity of my energy, and it rarely happens. But obviously, especially in the 3D. In the 3D genre, you really do have to keep up with developments and new stuff, new updates of, like, there's a new Blender version every other month, really, and they always introduce new features, they change stuff, like they make stuff better, other stuff stops working. You always have to be kind of going with all these developments, and sometimes that can be really overwhelming, and usually I don't have much capacity to get into it too deeply, and if I do, that
must affect your creative kind of flow sometimes.
Yeah,
if certain things like that step in.
It really does. Like, sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming, or like, it kind of, you feel forced to adapt your stuff, to adapt your knowledge, your skills, and to get into all these new tools. And if you open YouTube and there's like 10 different tutorial suggestions about, like, this thing is gonna switch, like it's gonna change 3D design forever and blah, blah, blah. All these fucking stupid sensational thumbnails that make you wanna go on there because of the fear of missing out on like the latest development and stuff.
Yeah.
which can be a bit a pain in the ass, I guess, that you don't have.
I guess that's I guess that's one of the elements of the digital side is the what's the word I'm looking for? The constant possibility of something new just popping up, like you say, that's just another option for you to consider, even if you are settled with a couple of different tools. Something is always, on the horizon for you. Whereas for me, with kind of being traditional, it's I've found the pen that I use. I've found the pencil I use, and I just keep buying those.
Yeah.
So I can definitely kind of sympathize on that.
That's kind of a luxury.
Yeah, I've never really felt like that, but for all my years of buying different pens and pencils and paper, I'm grateful that I've finally landed on the things that work for me, and anything new that comes out kind of I feel like would change up my work too much. I'd get away from what I've kind of aimed towards for so long.
Yeah, but that's really the exact feeling I get every time I do an update to my Blender version, or like load in a new plugin or buy a new plugin and stuff, because it always there's always a chance of things getting messed up and things getting chaotic, and you lose your kind of drive because you don't know how shit works anymore. And it's sometimes it's a lot to deal with.
I bet. Have you ever had any, like, the tools that you use? Did they ever, like, I don't know how it works. I'm kind of asking from a really naive point of view, but so I'm thinking of like the opposite of something new coming out and updates and things. Do they ever just stop being available and you have to find an alternative?
I think I've been lucky that it didn't really happen to me so far, but it does happen actually, and especially Adobe are the kings in doing that. And there are certain Adobe softwares that I use for 3D stuff, and it can always happen, and I've just been lucky so far, I guess. But sometimes it happens in Photoshop as well. Like, there's been an update and like one tool is just somewhere completely different, and for no fucking reason whatsoever. And this drives me so mad every time. It's
so I don't use Photoshop enough to really notice a lot of the changes, but my version of exactly what you've just explained is, the box
all
that
the
you can
shitty
tick
AI tools. Oh, sorry.
Well, yeah, I've not even.
Yeah, the ticking box of the selection tool, you mean?
Yeah, that's up in the top left. That's just like, it's just there for when you need it. Click it on and off as you need. And then they did an update a few months ago, and that was
that's exactly what I talked about.
And I'm like, why have you added more steps into something that's?
That drove me so fucking mad.
Yeah, and it's like. And then they've obviously like realized, and then
one day it just magically reappeared where it was.
It's almost like you can hear the apology, and they're like, "Sorry, we didn't mean to do that." It's like, just leave it there.
Yeah,
I've taken years to get used to it.
Exactly, and I turn it on and off all the time because it gets in the way of the composition. If you want to take a proper look at it, and that drove me really fucking mad. And
it's like someone walking up behind me while I'm drawing and like taking the pen out of my hand and putting it back downstairs.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I need that. That's exactly where it needs to be. It's just strange. But luckily, I kind of keep my digital side of things quite minimal, so I can get away with the basics. I haven't allowed myself to get too deep into it, partly for the updates, but for my own sanity as well.
I think that's the perfect. I think you have the perfect balance with that kind of with all the digital use, because even though you work with a very classic illustration feeling to all the stuff you do, you don't close yourself fully to the possibilities of the digital world. And you manage to really get like a good balanced result out of the experimentation here and there. And I think that's really the perfect use for you.
Well, I used to completely dismiss it years ago. I was against all digital art. Like, I was super naive, and I'd never even considered what went into it. And it was, over the years, thankfully, I've learned that digital art doesn't mean lazy. It's just another tool.
Yeah.
And again, I'm talking about digital art as in using a literal digital pen and having a literal blank canvas on screen and creating something incredible.
Of course,
it's the exact same process.
Sorry?
It's the exact same process of
of course.
Line making and building and shaping.
But there is a ton of illustrators out there that would curse at you for doing that, really, which I find ridiculous.
Curse at me for doing what? Do you mean?
For using digital tools.
Oh yeah, alongside traditionals, you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, fuck them. I'll do whatever. Right, if that works for them, cool.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Fair enough.
So that feels like a good time for us to wrap that up. I think we've got into some interesting things in there. And as always, I feel like there's probably more we can unpack. We could go around in circles with quite a lot of it. Yeah,
I think that's totally fair. And we just take it as we go. And, stuff keeps popping up probably. And we're probably going to repeat certain things here and there. And and any tangents that we go on, we're grateful for people sticking with us. And we kind of hopefully circle back round to the main point now and again. Yeah, I guess it's always... It's always easy to lose yourself in some whatever specific example or something like that. But I guess that also keeps it interesting. And if you have any suggestions, as said last time as well, listeners out there, thanks for sticking around. And let us know if if my dialect sucks or if the flow isn't good enough or whatever. But we're just figuring it out as we go, and we hope. Yeah, hopefully we can kind of iron things out as we get through a handful of episodes and kind of learn our way with it. Alongside all the background technical issues that have popped up randomly. It's even though this is only our second one, it's kind of giving more and more of a projection of how we're doing things. So, bear with us over the next handful. Yeah, please. To me, it's super interesting, and it's I'm sure for you too, and I hope for the listeners as well. Yeah, well, I find it interesting because there's a lot of things that I've either not really thought to break down in my own mind, and I've not really said out loud as well. So it's kind of unpacking a lot of the process and the perspective. So it's been quite beneficial for me so far. And again, we're only 2 episodes in, so I'm looking forward to getting more under our belt. Yeah, same here. Cool. Then hear you next time, I guess. Yeah, thank you guys. See you soon. Cheers.